I'm the eldest in the family. My name's Edna, and I was born on the 20th of May 1926.
And I'm her younger sister, Beryl, and I was born the 17th of November 1931. I can recall going for our first air raid practice down in our air raid shelter and having to put our gas masks on, and children being afraid and crying. We all were issued with air raid shelters, weren't they?
That's right, corrugated iron.
Corrugated iron, and our neighbours didn't have, she was a bit of a fusspot, she had a table, a metal table in the house, do you remember?
No, I don't remember that.
It was a metal table, and they slept underneath this heavy metal table. But to start with, when we first went down, while Edna was evacuated, I can remember going down, there was just bare earth. Lots of people had water in it, and I can remember going down, we just stood there and shivered. I suppose a lot was probably from fear, not knowing quite what it was all about. But eventually they gave us a concrete floor, and they also built us a wall about 4 feet, and Mum and Dad had bunks either side, and mine was a cross on legs over their feet, so that's, I think Edna didn't have a bed because Edna was at that time evacuated.
Yes, it was later that I came down.
But later on, when our grandma was bombed, we had our grandma and two aunts. So 4, I believe, slept on the floor, 2 on the bunks, and I was on the top.
And this happened on a regular basis. Dad used to come straight home from work and go straight down the air raid shelter, didn't he?
Mum didn't like us in the shelter with so many people, so in the end, when there was an air raid, we went in this cloakroom with Mum, which was, I presume, under, she must have felt it was reasonably safe. That's where we slept.
Yeah.
We didn't go in the air raid
find a rat or a mouse or something
in
a Wellington boot?
Yes. One night when they bombed Coventry, he called me out, and Edna said she remembers also going out. And I remember he showed us the glow. He pointed in a direction and he said to us, Coventry's having it bad tonight. And it was just as though the sky was lit up, wasn't it? As though they were guiding them to Coventry.
Yes.
Friday night was bath night.
Whether you needed it or not.
And I think we probably stepped in the same water, did we? I should imagine. I can't
remember that far.
I feel she had to ladle it out, or was it taps?
No, she ladled it out, but eventually we had a heater on the wall, which was very superior, wasn't it?
Ascot heater.
That's right.
Big Ascot heater.
Yeah.
Yes. I was well aware that there were a lot of families that were better off than others. Some families where particularly if the fathers and mothers drank, I mean, in those days they drank beer. There was a lot of poverty, and we had one opposite us. They had 5 children, and when I went once in their house, I don't know how I came to go in the house and went upstairs, they just had coats on their beds, and 2 had to sleep one end and 1 slept the other end, and there was hardly any furniture. And when I went once, they were having their dinner, and they were having cremola for the dinner. And I can remember the mother asking me, did I want some cremola? And I said, no, thank you, because I felt that if I asked for some, that the others would have less.
Well, we had a Singer sewing machine, which was, Mum always used to say it was the only thing she'd ever had on hire purchase, and it's still in existence. I've still got it to this very day. Because she used, with Cynthia's mum, Mrs. Glover, they used to go to the local health centre each Wednesday, where there was a sewing instructor there, and they both learned to sew, and both used to make quite a few of our clothes, hadn't they, in those days?
Yes, I remember Mrs. Glover making Cynthia's air raid, they called them siren suits, didn't they? Out of an old coat.
Yeah. For
the little ones, they had that was the first thing that we had siren suits. They were invented almost at that time. Now siren we call them suits because snow suits. Now we'd call them, wouldn't we? I think. I don't know.
Churchill started that, didn't he? He had siren suits and
that's right.
all caught on.
We knitted for the Air Force, we knitted socks for the Air Force, we knitted sea boots for the Merchant Navy, and we knitted also gloves for the Russians, for the Russian army, and they had they had 3 fingers in together, one for the trigger finger and the thumb. And this was considered to be our war effort. Well, I can remember our school was on School Road, and there was a grocer's shop, and those that transported the Lancaster bombers to go to another factory, they used to stop at our grocer's, and she provided them with sandwiches. And I can remember her making quite a fuss of them because it was felt that they were doing a war job.
Which you telling the tale about it?
Yeah, Edna didn't like worms, and Edna, being 5.5 years older than me, could always tell me what to do. So if I got a bit fed up of her, I'd go and find a worm. She would immediately dash into the toilet. I think this was when Mum wasn't there, wasn't it?
I can't remember.
Yeah, I think my mum was at work. So I'd put this worm, dandle it on a stick, and there was a gap about 6 inches under the door, and I'd dandle this worm while she was stood on the loo, presumably screaming her head off. I had no idea in those days, that people could be really sort of frightened of it, but it was my one way. She'd stay there for quite a while for fear that I'd got this worm until I left her alone, and then I suppose sometime you crept back out.
I must have done, yeah. I remember standing on the toilet because if I was sat on the toilet, whether I was going out, whatever, the fact that you could reach my legs, you see, so I'd got to get up on the toilet seat.
Well, the Bullring was a fascinating place, wasn't it, in the old days? I can recall we used to go and get in the war. We bought our chickens. You bought little fluffy chickens, and Dad used to put them in the bath when we arrived home, didn't
This was to fatten for Christmas, wasn't it?
Yes, because there weren't the chickens that there are nowadays.
No, it was a luxury in those days.
You had chicken at Christmas.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes. You had to pluck them yourself. Yeah. They weren't prepared.
The food in the war obviously was rationed. I think Beryl's got some details of it. But it was amazing, of all the food and the sweets that we couldn't have, we seemed to have enough, didn't we? We never ever went hungry.
But
it was all and they say that we were very much healthier for having that restricted diet, which is
Yeah, I mean, and they told us that raw carrots, we ate raw carrots for the first time. If you didn't go to buy sweets, you bought a raw carrot. I think the greengrocers, they sold them about halfpenny each while we were coming home, and we'd take them to school and clean them a bit under the tap and eat raw carrots.
Auntie Hilda's shop was in Ladypool Road. It's got a big front window, and she'd always dress the window very well indeed. She actually had 2 shops there, because she was bummed out of the one and went, I think it was 2 doors down to this other one. And she always dressed the window very nicely, and at Christmas she got all the items that she put in the window. She sold, bear in mind, records, Meccano, gramophone needles, toys, and everything she put in the window was all red, and at Easter she used to do the window all in yellow.
We didn't have toilet paper then at all. Our parents cut up newspaper and hung it on a string.
Made squares.
We used to go away for a week, hadn't we, usually? Dad only had a week. In those days, Dad only had a week, didn't they?
But we were fortunate in as much as, I was going to say, we went away, I think, every year, and a lot of children didn't have any holidays at all, did they? So we were really fortunate in those days.
It was a scramble, I remember, for the train. I was terrified.
Yes.
I wanted to push the young ones through the windows to get us. I was absolutely terrified that no way could they push me through. It was frightening.
I can remember thinking,
such a crowd
on the journey, which must have been by bus to the station, all day worrying about where we're going to get on it, where we're going to all be together.
Yes,
it was quite a worry.
Yes, because there was crowds at the bus,
at the
railway station, wasn't there?
Yeah, all fighting the way to get on. And then, of course, there were the trams that went along to the Lickey Hills.
Oh, yes.
Where
yes.
you used to go. It was quite a long journey, and it was the done thing every bank holiday for everybody to go to visit the Lickeys. And you all unloaded at the Lickeys, and there were those tram seats where you moved. They just moved the backs.
Just moved the backs.
And so they didn't have to turn the tram round.
And they moved that metal piece, didn't
that's
they?
That's right, yeah.
To go the other way.
And where there was always a long queue of people waiting to come back, so it was a case of there and empty, fill up and move off again. That was quite a day trip, wasn't it, there?
Yeah, what fascinated me was the Austin. Dad used to say, this is the Austin, and you were on several stops.
To cover that, yeah.
And I couldn't believe that was all the same factory.
Which is where Dad worked, obviously,
yes,
from Yardley Wood as well.
Yeah, because I can remember at school when our teacher asked us once where our fathers worked. I said he worked in Australia, and she said, you mean the Austin? I was only in the infants at the time.
We went, similar to what you mentioned earlier, camping with the school, I don't know how, to Ulster with the domestic science teacher. And there, it was the first time I wore trousers, I must admit that, and we went on to stacking corn, stucks,
they call it, don't they?
And picking strawberries, which was quite a back-aching thing, but I still hadn't been a land girl.
I think that if I had to go in, I think that would have probably been my choice, yes. Because I quite liked the land. In fact, I did the garden when Dad was doing a lot of work, because Dad worked long hours, being on war work. I started, that's how I had the interest in doing that. And I can remember the breeches, my first pair of cycling shorts, I shortened breeches. I made them they were corduroy, and I made them into cycling shorts. They're ideal for that.
Yeah.
I used to cycle quite a lot, and I went on holiday with a friend. We had a tandem, actually. We bought a tandem between us. Cynthia Glover, who lived at Yardley Wood, she's quite a friend of mine, and we went off cycling to France, and we arrived in Paris. I can remember the chain kept coming off this tandem. My hands were covered in oil. Eventually we arrived at a campsite in Paris, and we had a tent with us, so we put the tent up and camped, and then we all used to mix together, having our meals outside. It was a bit cramped there, and I remember hearing a boy, I thought he was American actually, he seemed to have a bit of an American accent, and somehow we got attached. And it was the festival of the Bastille the next day, and we all went off there, and I went off, we sort of partnered up with Cor, and that's how I met my husband.
Well, the rest is history, as they say.